What's up, guys, and welcome to the LVL Health podcast. Today, we're joined by Jessika Ramie, personal trainer, nutrition coach, and owner of her own company, FYTE, Find Yourself Through Exercise. Jessika has a unique background in recreational therapeutics that has influenced how she works with clients. She's also involved with the comprehensive coaching community, which you heard us talk about in our episode with Dr. Fundaro. And she has some amazing perspectives on exercise, health, and well-being. Huge thanks to Jessika for coming on the show. You guys can find her on Instagram at FYTE_with_Jessika Ramie or on her website, FYTE.co. That's FYTE.co. The links for those are going to be down in the description. If you haven't already, go set up your membership on LVLHealth.net. We have memberships for health and fitness professionals as well as clients and patients. We hope you enjoy the episode.
All right. Welcome, Jessika. It's good to be talking with you.
You too.
So I was first introduced to you through Dr. Gabrielle Fundaro and the comprehensive coaching community. And right away, I could tell that, you were the first one to interact with us and we started talking and stuff like that. But then during their Bridging the Gap webinar series, they dropped a quote of yours, which I'm going to read it off verbatim. All humans are entitled to find their own path to health. And it really, really resonated with me because I think the more that I've been in fitness, the more that I've worked with people, I really appreciate like the journey and the evolution that has to occur in professionals and clients and patients. And I don't think that a fitness professional starts there. So like having that mindset, I'm sure it took a while to get there. So in the spirit of that, evolution, can you just give us a background of who you are, what you do, and how you got to the point that you are now?
So much evolution. Okay, I'm going to try to keep it short though. So I got involved in fitness, or I've always liked fitness, but I became involved as a consumer when I was 16 to kind of fight my way out of a depression. Then I went on to school to become a therapeutic recreation specialist because I realized this is a very cool thing to kind of help people. Fast forward years down the road, I continue my journey. I got into bodybuilding. So I was your typical gym rat meathead. And then I went through a few iterations of my own personal training career. I started out in healthcare, working with chemical dependency. And then it evolved into, I worked in the military at West Point there, working with the cadets and always doing this kind of thing on the side. But it was until recently, I want to say until the past 2 years, I still kind of maintained that. I think we all know you're talking about like a younger mindset of a personal trainer, right? Where your typical personal trainer, I don't want to say it in a negative way, but all about reps, sets, the mechanics of fighting to get people to do what you want them to do. And that kind of all changed for me. And I kind of went back to my roots of a therapeutic rec specialist throughout COVID and throughout some personal changes in my home with my kids. So for me, what vibed with me about the comprehensive coaching movement is it takes into account our values. Now, as a gym rat and a meathead, that interested me because, bodybuilding, we don't really talk about that, the art of taking our values into consideration. And that always felt missing for me because I really enjoy the art of. So throughout COVID and then finding Gabrielle and Shannon and the comprehensive coaching movement, I started to pull back and find all my values and the things that mattered to me in my life as a consumer, as a coach, and as just a human being. How do I find my path? What does it look like? So it's kind of evolved.
So it seems like you ran into them at kind of I wouldn't say lucky time, but a good time in your career. I would say the same thing for me. I was going through a transition. I was entirely aesthetically focused, extrinsically driven for the better part of honestly 2 decades. So I started lifting when I was 12 or 13, and gosh, what a great time to start lifting, but also what a bad time to throw that giant wrench into self-image and body image issues and stuff like that. But so it took me a very long time to get away from, you're right, like saying that finding what your values are, that was not even a question, because that wasn't even anything that we even thought about. I want to look as good as possible. And then as social media came on the scene, I need to look as good as possible all the time. So what I think we're seeing a lot is the physique realm specifically is just not identifying the values. And then, you get caught in this trap where you're always chasing that next competition, always chasing that next finish line, but there's always going to be another finish line. That's very interesting. That prerequisite knowledge, I kind of look at it physically as a personal trainer. You get that level of prerequisite knowledge, physiology, biomechanics, things like that. And then you realize, oh, there's this whole other piece that I have not even addressed, the psychological side. And I think that you are uniquely prepared for that, having that background in therapeutics. But I don't think most people even address that. But one thing I want to touch on, though, can you just really describe what a therapeutic recreation specialist does and how that kind of prepared you uniquely for training?
Sure. So basically, the role of a therapeutic recreation specialist is someone who, like, you take a person, a human being, look at their life, and you address the concerns of physical, mental, emotional, social, occupational, and you work with those pillars rather than just talk or just do any one thing. And you can pull from a lot of different areas to address those needs. So it really works really well with personal training, right? So I work a lot with women my age. And a lot of what they go through is more about the behavioral, emotional, the shame pieces. That's a big barrier. They're stuck there. So me rewriting macros for them, what purpose does that serve? And then what joy do I find as a coach? Because if I'm doing stuff that's not really useful to them, not increasing the value of their life, and basically I found that I was actually perpetuating shame. I think that our industry at its youngest age, like when we're newbies and we're first learning, and I think it can be kind of predatory. Like people prey on people, we impose our will on people. If you're a trainer, I think you probably know, when we're working with people, they put us up here and themselves down here. And they don't give themselves a voice. If we say it, they do it. And in my experience and in my past, I think I got off on that in my earlier years, like, because I say so. But what about them? So I've been, like I said, I enjoy bodybuilding. I love everything about it. I love Arnold. I love Frank Zane. I love all the old, like, it's my jam. I love it. But that's my passion. Like, I find art there. Well, if I have a coach that's just like barking orders at me, what happens to the art in me? Like, what happens to like, I've been on the receiving end of having that kind of squashed. And when I had that squashed as a consumer, it made me really aware as a coach. I don't want to ever do that. I want to make sure that whoever I'm talking to has a voice. I want them to feel like they can talk to me. Like, I see it as, communication can open or close a door. If the door is closed, what did I do to facilitate that door being closed? How do I help them open that door? Like, we had a comprehensive coaching talk last night. They do their monthly talks, and it was all about being a master of the conversation as a method of behavior change and helping people overcome ambivalence. And it was really amazing, because once you can start to move those big rocks, then you can help people clear the weeds and come along for the walk.
Man, so that really highlights, like, there really is a level of knowledge that you have to have in order to create change, but also then how you apply that has to be very, very client focused. And I look back as well, and I realized there were so many times that you said you kind of got off on that, having that superiority. And I don't think that it's malicious, but it's very, very much a human tendency to thrive. And I feel like you are, enjoying that, because there really is that imbalance of knowledge. And I think that's kind of where people get manipulated by health and fitness professionals, because there is that imbalance. And I think we actually talked about this with Gabrielle when I did an interview with her, because it's such a common theme, is having that imbalance and not basically breaking it down and realizing that the client is going to lead this conversation. The client is going to be the one that decides change. And I mean, I look back and I thought that maybe if someone wasn't listening to me, if somebody wasn't following through, that it was something intrinsically wrong with them. Like, I did my part, I gave them the information, but the information is almost the least important part of that whole transaction. It's the, how do I get them to overcome those issues? So with that little bit on the therapeutic recreation specialist, that got me thinking, something that I see as a common theme in on your page and some of your writing as well, is finding yourself through exercise. You mentioned that a lot of times there's different types of exercise that people are using, things like that. But can you kind of explain what it means to you to find yourself through exercise, and how do you help your clients find themselves through exercise?
Awesome question. So yeah, so the name of my company is FYTE, which is Find Yourself Through Exercise. I came up with that because it was in line with therapeutic rec, right? I believe in the therapeutic value of exercise as a practice. You know, we think of like yoga as a daily practice or meditation as a practice. And I feel like exercise is viewed as something that we have to do, almost like being forced to do, or like dread, or like there's the mindset. It's not like a process. It's a necessary evil. But exercise in and of itself does a lot to alleviate anxiety, reduce stress, calm us down, improve our sleep. It makes me a lot less hostile. Like I find myself there. It's how, for me, I connect to the moment. So when I'm working with clients, of course we use the principles and the foundations of personal training, right? And the anatomy and the kinesiology and the physiology. But also I try to incorporate, what does it mean to you? What's the therapeutic value of this? Like, invite yourself for that time to be there, to be present as part of what are you doing? Involve yourself in it. And rather than just focus on the end goal, involve yourself in the process of, what does this feel like to me? What muscle am I using? I try to get them to do that. Like if I can get them to pay attention to the muscles that they're using throughout the exercise and educate them on those things, they're connecting to the moment. So now it has even more therapeutic value. Mm-hmm. And then you could tie that into their own values. Are they worth that time?
That's beautiful.
Your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Because I mean, you helped me articulate something that I try to, I've kind of, how you mull things over in your head for a very long time. I think that it really hurts me when I meet with a client or I talk with somebody and they've worked with a professional in the past that has pushed them in the opposite direction. Exercise should not be viewed as some sort of punishment. It shouldn't be a requirement. It should be something that you do to express, express your appreciation for your body. And I think oftentimes it gets pushed into the punishment and I have to do this category. And a lot of coaches will feed into that by having that authoritative approach. I mean, I have said this many times. I absolutely love lifting more than a lot of things in my life, and certainly had bad roots or, less than healthy, productive roots for me, but it's gotten me through quite a bit in my life. And I've said this tons of times. I think that awareness that you were talking about, that awareness and connecting and being an active participant, I call it, in every single rep, it absolutely is meditative. Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day in a little bit more of a masochistic way. I like getting tattoos because I can't think about anything else.
Me too. Just got a new one.
Yeah, I mean, I about 1 minute in, I'm absolutely hating it, but I can't think about anything else except for that experience. The same thing when you're lifting. If you become such an active participant in that experience, then it really is meditative, because you're not thinking about what you have to do later. You're not thinking about the homework you have to do, the bills you have to pay. And it does take quite a bit of conscious effort, but so does any other of these mindfulness practices. I wonder do you think that your bodybuilding experience has fed into that? Because one of the biggest things, if you want to get past the point in bodybuilding or just really lifting in general, you're going to have to learn how to develop that connection with the muscles. Do you think that is what led you to having this little bit deeper appreciation? Because a lot of people will just go through the reps. Even if they've been in the gym for years, they're just going through the reps. And I think at some point you have to transition to be actively participating. Do you think that your bodybuilding experience definitely set you up for that, or was there something else?
I don't think so. I think for me, it was actually in our early days. You were talking about for you got involved in lifting when you were young. I think getting involved in lifting when we're young, we develop a real love for it. So we have a long path and history with it. So when I was 16, but I wasn't given a choice. Like, I always loved fitness, but I went through a really bad depression, and to get out of it, my dad said, and now you're going to the gym, and here's your membership, and here's your sneakers, and off you go. And I started, it was like a new lease on life. And that's where I started to kind of find my own peace. You just mentioned meditation. That's where I found it, through that daily practice, because I didn't want to do any of what I used to do. And I lived in a beautiful new house, and I would go running and rollerblading and go to the gym. And it's where I really found my joy. So I think for me, the depression and the mental health aspect actually, and the art of that, and realizing that I could create something here. The beauty of creating muscles, I love that. Like, I realized I could create not only a calm headspace, but I could create a body that I want. And it didn't seem punitive. It's not to me like dieting down and trying to shrink. I like the idea of trying to grow, to make myself stronger. So that's like art. So it's depression, art, bodybuilding, I think, for me.
That's, man, you're kind of pushing me down a completely different road than I had planned, because same thing, growing up, whether or not it was the truth, I had quite a bit of social anxiety. I had quite a bit of, inferiority complex. So the way that I saw a path to equalize that, how wrong that was to build muscle, because that happens no matter what. Like, that is kind of like the great equalizer. It doesn't matter how much money you have, although it would help, but the effort is kind of irrefutable. You have to put in effort to get that result. And so that's really, and then the psychological side, the anxiety, depression. I was given a PTSD diagnosis from the Marine Corps, from experiences in Afghanistan. And, time and time again, studies come out, like, these kinds of psychological issues can be greatly helped on all kinds of levels. We could talk about the neurochemistry behind everything like that, right. But I think just that human beings were made to exert effort, and we just don't get that in our life as much anymore. So whether that was, you chose to be a distance runner, or you chose to have some sort of strength sport, you chose bodybuilding as an expression of that. And I think that that just reminds me so much of my growth through that. Now, you mentioned, bodybuilding has been a huge part of your life for your whole fitness career. Have you worked with
no? I've always been a lifter, but I only started competing 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So you had a deep intrinsic love for it long before. So, so what, I had a question about the coaches you've worked with in the past and how they've influenced you, but I was wondering, do you think that had you gotten into bodybuilding, as a lot of people are now, the bikini and the wellness and the categories are expanding, I think women are getting into it at a very much more vulnerable age. Do you think had you gotten into it early on, would you have such a healthy relationship with it like you do now?
I bet probably not. I think that, so interestingly, I choose not to really work with competitors, because I think it can be very unhealthy. I really do. I think you have to be in a really good mindset for it. It's something that it's funny because I almost didn't I don't always admit to people that I do it, because in my mind, it can be so unhealthy. It's kind of like my personal thing. Yeah, I think I probably would have gone down a bad path. Like, girls, people in general, I think sometimes come into this because we're trying to find our strength, because we don't feel it. And if we're really young, think about yourself when you're young. I'll think about myself when I'm young. I was really impressionable and didn't know my own values or what mattered to me. Like, for instance, so I'm prepping now. I've learned through the years, there are certain things that are non-negotiable for me, certain values I have. My family is a huge value. I don't ever want them to feel like, I don't ever want the stage or a process to come in front of my family. They're my everything. So I have to work them into it. I want some autonomy. I want to be able to use what I know. Like, I can't have a coach barking down at me. Like, so, but it's my age, because I'm old as F. It's my age that lets me know that helped me learn what my values are. So I stand on solid ground, and I know what will work for me and what won't.
So I did one physique competition when I was 3 years ago now, so 25 or 26 at the time. And just, I know for a fact that I did poorly because I all types of excuses. My physique looked fine. I did not practice posing. I moved like a mechanic, like mechanically from being in the Marine Corps for so long. But I was able to kind of look at that and be like, okay, you know, it's just not for me. I saw the level of extremity that it took to get to that point, and it just wasn't, you know, like you said, wasn't in the cards for me in terms of aligning with my values. But what I do like to look at, I like to look at natural bodybuilders specifically. And I think you've worked with 3DMJ in the past.
Yeah, I'm working with Alberto Nunez now.
Oh man. So I love looking at the information that those people put out, because that's kind of perfect world, right? That's kind of like, okay, perfect world, everything's optimal. We get to control everything down the minutia. And then I apply what is appropriate to the client. So I look at, you know, what's going on with your life, how much stress do you have, are you able to get enough sleep in, and then you run everything through that filter. But I love looking at their information and seeing, okay, what would be perfect. Is there any ways that working with those high level coaches has influenced you working with normal people?
Yes, I think I ask more questions. I realize the value in things outside of the basics. You know what I mean when I say the basics, right? We all know the basics. I think that for us as coaches, I'm sure for you, since we met through comprehensive coaching, our consistent absorption of higher level knowledge, of the research, of these people that have all this amazing knowledge and insight for us is really important. Learning to look at everything. Like, I love listening to Jeff Alberts. He talks a lot about it, his family. I've always really related to that. But asking more questions about stress level, or what about personal choice? Like, if you don't like breakfast, am I going to if I have forced somebody who doesn't like breakfast to eat breakfast, I just made their adherence go down. So I like the idea of bringing personal choice into it. What does this look like for you? Having some flexibility and autonomy. And I think frequently, like as coaches, we both talk about that, you know, your coach is up here and the client is down here. I know probably for you, definitely for me, it's not out of anything other than ignorance, not knowing better. We think we have all the information, not knowing that the client has half the information. We only have 50%. We have some, they have the rest. How do these two things meet? Did I answer?
Yes. So at a certain point, it's scary because at a certain point you have to, so you're learning. I mean, you're growing throughout your career. And at a certain point, you get to the point where you're like, oh shit, I don't know what I don't know. I thought that I knew a lot, and now I'm got to the point where I realize all this stuff that I didn't know. And it's so much more comfortable back in that I think I know everything zone. But you're right, how arrogant that is.
True.
I mean, for example, you mentioned the flexibility that you can have even stepping on stage, like getting to the point where you're stepping on stage, how much freedom you have. And then I still hear coaches putting non-competitors on a completely rigid, inflexible program. It's like, okay, well, this person can step on stage at 3 to 5% body fat, and you're just trying to lose 10 pounds. Why does she or he need to be so strict and so focused? I mean, and then you talk about Jeff Alberts, the physique that he can put together in his garage gym. I mean, he's got a nice garage gym, but like it's right? A garage gym nonetheless. So that was always something that I saw going through COVID and everything like that, going through the lockdowns. I was able to see, okay, it can definitely be done. I mean, I just barely now got a squat rack because everything's going down, but on price. But it was very encouraging to see that. So stepping away from competing just a little bit, what are some of the biggest obstacles that you see that you've seen everyday clients of yours run into?
I think there's a lot. So
we can be specific. Do you want to go weight loss mistakes and then maybe muscle building mistakes?
I want to go mindset mistakes.
Go for it. Absolutely.
Because that's the umbrella, I think, with everybody. They get pushed. Here's what. This is going to go 7 directions, so you're going to have to follow me here.
I'm all for it.
What I love and feel passionate about with my clients is that I almost feel like a protector, right? So you talk about every human is entitled to their own path to health. My clients come to me, and actually, let's just talk about people. I find us looking for this ideal physique, usually. So it's through the process of questioning, and hopefully in our education, we know the questions to ask. We uncover a whole lot of stuff going on, the undercurrents, right? So they come to us for this, not knowing that they're even allowed to have a voice. They have been preyed upon. Keep going back to that word predatory lately, by MLM stuff, the multi-level marketing stuff that I just can't even, but I'm trying to have a charitable mindset, so I will not go there. That stuff, the stuff that they consume on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, and they're comparing themselves to competitors or these perfect fitness people. And I think they believe that weight loss and health are the same thing, and they're not. Being open to education is really important, both for us and for them, So I had said to Gabrielle early on when I started working with her that part of my goal, my personal mission is I want to be able to be a liaison between people like Gabrielle, people like Jeff Alberts or Eric Helms or Shannon, and the people that I work with, because they don't know that those people exist. They know those MLM companies that I won't mention. They know those fad diets that I won't mention. That's what they know. And they believe that that is health. So I think if you're asking me what the biggest obstacle is, it's that they're misguided, but it's not their fault. They're vulnerable. They've been broken. I half wrote a blog series on dieting being a toxic relationship, and it is. So it leads us to falsely believe in stuff. It lies to us. It builds us up. We crash down. We become vulnerable. Here comes another thing to lie to us. And we believe each time, almost like a toxic relationship. So I see my role as a coach also is to help them disseminate this information rather than taking it all in. How do you even decipher what's valid, what's not? The moving good and bad out of the line of sight, finding the middle, finding the gray, finding the autonomy. They're saturated. I think that's the biggest problem. They're saturated and a little misguided, and they've been hurt. After bad relationships, you go to therapy. You fix it so that you don't make the same mistakes. But people don't do that necessarily with dieting. They might make the same mistakes over and over and over again because they're still trying to find true love or the perfect diet. Did I answer that one?
Yes, behavior change is one of the more complex, but also once you crack open that box, that Pandora's box, you can't go back. You can't go back to just sets, reps. And I think that the hugest part of that is being able to investigate and have a conversation with somebody and find out everything, like you said, going on behind the scenes, because that's so much more important. So much more important. So I keep thinking about, I look back and I would sit down with somebody and build them the perfect plan with zero. I mean, I always knew how important it was to have a degree of individualization, but you need to be able to, you need to know how to be able to dig a little bit and get in there. And you use the term predatory, which I think it's spot on, because I try to not consume social media as much as possible, which is hard having a business in the fitness space. But I try not to, because I've always thought that you're going to get brainwashed by what you see. So I try to brainwash myself with productive things. But I do see people calling out certain individuals, people, just making people aware that these things are going on. And it really is disgusting. It really is disgusting because it's playing on people's just instincts to want to have that easy fix, to want to believe, oh, this is the secret doctors don't want you to know, or whatever it is. And it's frustrating. And fortunately, and like you as well, and anybody that's taken maybe some anatomy and biology classes, things like that, is able to identify, okay, that, they're drinking a little shot glass and they're losing body fat. That's not how it works. I see that commercial all the time. And so it really is, when I first reached out to Gabby, I was so happy when she got back to me, because there are those people out there. In my mind, I call them information evangelists. They're out there trying to get that good information out there, but they aren't.
Awesome. I like that term.
take it, please. I'm trying to make it a thing like fetch. But so I think that it's because they aren't using those manipulative tools. And there are people that get up there, good followers and everything like that. But that's not necessarily who the people that need to hear them break things down. That's not who's running into them. And it is frustrating because oftentimes I've thought, how do you know if that person sitting across from you during a consultation that's their last straw? Maybe that's the last time they're going to work up to the courage to come into a gym, to meet with a professional, to try to make some change. And then they get burned by somebody that's just really trying to manipulate them. So I'm glad that other people have made that distinction, because I too feel like I kind of sandwiched myself in the middle of the experts, the PhDs, the people leading the field. And I'm just kind of like running the information that they give out through a little filter and try to relay it to people in a way that they can understand. Because to be fair, sometimes, I'll listen to a podcast with Eric Helms and I have to listen to it a couple times to really understand what he's saying.
Dude, like, I feel a little dumb when I'm done. I got to listen a couple times. You ever listen to Brad Schoenfeld? I listen to him a lot, but you got to listen many times. I've done conferences where I've gone with him in person, and I'm like, blah, blah, blah. I need a break.
It's so funny because what a perfect example of someone that did not fall into the ego trap, because you look at Brad Schoenfeld and I'm sure he, comparative to someone else's age, he looks great, but you look at him next to a bodybuilder stepping on stage and you're like, oh, what does this guy know? But what a horrible fallacy that we fall into even as professionals. But this kind of feeds back into the normal people are seeing somebody in the, they would see a professional physique competitor versus Brad Schoenfeld and they're like, okay, that guy doesn't know anything. But we play on the fitness industry in general tends to play on human tendencies in a way that definitely serves profits more than anything else.
So if we're looking at just appearance, so you mentioned Brad, right? If the fitness industry just looks at appearance, that's why it makes money, right? It's on off. It's just focused on appearance. That's one level, and it's kind of shallow. It's extrinsic. You got to take it and elaborate on that, kind of like what we're trying to do is like bring the person in, find the underlying currents, find the meaning behind it, get them involved in it, make it suit their life. And then they stay. Like, I jammed on the word adherence for a long time because that was the biggest problem, or it's a huge problem, right? Huge problem. Mm-hmm. But when you make the process fit the person, adherence becomes a lot less of a problem. If you're trying to make the person fit the diet rather than a process around a person, it's two totally different scenarios. One is for them, one adds to their value, one is something that they have to do. And then we go back to the relationship to exercise. So, and you had mentioned something like the more you know, the less you know. I jam on that all the time because I try to study as much as I can. And I end up feeling like, oh my God, where have I been? But I think it's our responsibility as professionals to grab as much information so that we can digest it and hand it down.
That's really all that you can ask for, because there's no exam that we're all taking to see where everybody's at. There's no standardized test. But I think that that you just have to accept that it's perpetual. You're never going to get to where you want to be because you're always going to find more stuff that you don't know. I'll read a book and I end up having 3 more books that I have to read to continue my education down that path. That's happened to me with all of this behavior change. And you mentioned the adherence aspect, and I think that that's kind of become a buzzword. It's obviously, it's always on the side of the triangle because of the pyramid, because if you don't adhere, then, nothing else matters. So, but I think what's happening is people are saying, oh, adherence is what's most important. In much the same way that, for instance, they'll say, if you want to lose weight, it's just as simple as calories in, calories out. You just move more, eat less. But it's like, okay, but we have to look at this person as a whole, as an individual, and run all of that information through that. But I think that that's really one of the biggest aspects, is just being willing to accept that this is a perpetual process, a perpetual pursuit that's never going to end.
Agreed.
So we touched on quite a bit of stuff, and I'm definitely going to watch this again because I think It's interesting when you're able to talk to somebody that has had, obviously our backgrounds are quite different, but I think that we've come to appreciate the iron game in much the same way. So before we end here though, can you give us just a few, I mean, you've touched on a bunch, so maybe if you want to just get one that just pops into your head as most important, what is a way that the nutrition and fitness space can improve?
A way that the nutrition and fitness spaces can improve. As professionals?
Man, that's the tough question right there, because one doesn't exist without the other, obviously, and I think one feeds into the other. But I think that as professionals, we have a responsibility to lead that change. So I would say, let's go with as professionals.
As professionals, I think we need to move this primarily. Move that. We'll come alongside, listen, and create that space, create a safe space, and understand that the people that we're working with, I wish everyone could understand this, that the people that we're working with are coming to us because they actually need a solution. They need help. They really need help. This is years and years of being beaten down by the same thing and feeling. They have clients who won't take pictures, who won't walk past mirrors, who won't. That's so sad. So I think to make it safe for them, to show them what we know. You enjoy fitness, I enjoy fitness. So like we're two of a whole, but I think we're also responsible to kind of help create a culture around us. So if we're talking about you and I as professionals, we're responsible to help push the culture around us, to speak the way we're speaking, to add to it, and then to have some respect and listen to our clients.
Man, that's phenomenal. I think that that coming alongside is such an important point. That's something that I never ever would have ever thought to do, because you're right. It doesn't, that change comes from in them, and all of the problems come with them. You mentioned how as professionals, we kind of just have to lead that. And I would think that you're kind of like forcing out over very long periods of time, forcing out those old practices by just showing people the right way to do things. You can't call people out. I mean, you have to treat everyone as professionals. And if we call somebody out, that's not going to help. That's just going to push them in the opposite direction. And I think that is kind of something that we've been trying to do with Level, because we're never going to replace social media. Gosh, those things, they're absolute juggernauts. But what we can do is provide an alternative and provide an alternative solution for people to meet with clients, to meet people that can help them. So I was absolutely very excited to have you be our first personal trainer on the podcast. I've met with a few physical therapists and Gabrielle, so I haven't really been on the same level with somebody and been able to kind of talk into the background in the same way. So we very much appreciate you coming on the show,
Thank
Jessika.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Yes, ma'am. So it was good talking to you, and we'll see you again sometime soon.
All right. Thanks so much. Take care.